Howdy folks, welcome to the Daily Coin. My name is Rory and today is Wednesday, September the 26th, 2018. And I have the very distinct honor and great pleasure of welcoming back to the Daily Coin someone that I respect a great deal because he only speaks when there is something that he feels that is important to share with the audience. I sent him an email several weeks ago about what's going on with gold and silver. We're going to discuss that email and we're going to talk about some more timely issues as well. And I'm speaking, of course, of Michael Noonan from Edge Trader Plus. Michael, welcome back to the Daily Coin.
Rory, always a delight to talk with you. So many good things happen.
Yes, I'm really glad that you're here. We have a lot to cover and we're just going to jump right in.
Absolutely.
I want to read this and I want to get your reaction to it, Michael.
Sure.
And this is a paragraph. It's about halfway down it's just above the image of the EU Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini speaking alongside Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif. And it says, this is the paragraph. It says, while keeping SWIFT as is for now, the EU's foreign policy head Federica Mogherini, side by side with Iran's foreign minister Javad Zarif, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing both of their names and I apologize, but they both announced a, quote, special purpose vehicle jointly in English and Farsi after a meeting at the UN of the parties still committed to the deal: Iran, the European Union, United Kingdom, France, Germany, Russia, and China. In fact, everyone but the U.S. And just below that, it says, according to Mogherini, the plan to create the SPV, the Special Purpose Vehicle, quote, will mean that EU member states will set up a legal entity to facilitate legitimate financial transactions with Iran, and this will allow European companies to continue trade with Iran, end quote, despite Trump's opposition and the sanctions we just mentioned. What do you think about all this? I mean, is this going to happen? Because if this happens, this could be real problems.
Well, I'm not sure if it'll happen, A, and B, even if it does, if it'll be real problems. You have to remember who runs the SWIFT. Is it the BIS or the IMF?
Yes, all of the above.
Okay, all right. That's they're all part of the same crew.
Yes.
So this is like the pot calling the kettle black. It's not going to jeopardize the dollar's reserve status any more than anything else already has that has jeopardized the dollar status. Yet it still remains in force primarily because the United States remains militarily dominant and militarily and financially. They go after, look what's happening in South America, how they're destroying these countries financially. Destroying them, what they did in Libya. You know, they're doing the same thing. Well, France was probably the instigator on that because of the Libyan threat to the currency, which was France's backyard. And France couldn't tolerate something like that. But the United States was a big part, a major factor in what went on in Libya and the exodus and ultimate death of Gaddafi.
Yeah, I mean, we blew them apart. I mean, we did all the dirty work, and then France went in and.
Well, it was France that was upset about the Gaddafi wanting to have a gold-backed currency in the dinar. It would threaten France's control over the Libyan currencies. That was their huge threat, and then the United States wouldn't tolerate anything like that either. So this to me is just bread and circuses, Rory.
Okay. Well, I was kind of thinking along the same lines, but then it's like, well, maybe there is something to this, and I still think that there may be because, as you and I both know, it seems like Trump is doing some things that on one side look like he's attacking this whole cabal, but then on the other side, it looks like he's playing along with with what's going on. I mean, and do you see that as part of what's unfolding here?
Yes, and I wish I had greater insight into what's going on because what you just described is accurate. It's how much independence does he really have? Probably little to none. Yet he's doing some damage. The deep state, as they call it, the deep state is pretty much the system, as it were. It has nothing to do
Yes,
with elites. The elites are still in the background. The elites are still in control, as far as I'm concerned. So the deep state is the established system, and deep is the proper word for it because the depth of how these uh, uh, mandarins are entrenched in the political system is probably like the roots of a sequoia tree. They probably run so deep that they can withstand almost everything from being uprooted. I've never seen a president and the institution of the presidency under such gross attack from the political parties, from the political system, from the mainstream media, from corporate, every possible entity, everybody wanting him to be impeached shortly after he took office. It's been that kind of assault on the institution of the government by the deep state because they can't stand what Trump is doing, what he stands for. Yet, almost all the people that he is elected to or that he's appointed to primary positions are from the swamp. So
exactly. That's what's confusing to me, and I would imagine a lot of other people as well. It's like, how can you really attack the so-called swamp if you are refilling it? You're just playing
I think,
along
yeah,
with it.
I think that's why it's so enigmatic. Contrast him with Obama, for example, who made let's say 10 promises before election and didn't keep any one of them, and then he became the deep state. He supported the deep state. Everything he did was for the benefit of Wall Street. Prior to election, Wall Street had him to fear. After the election, all he did was bring in Wall Street people, Geithner, etc. And they've been eviscerating this country financially for so long. It's sickening.
It is sickening.
We supposedly have a two-party system, which I think is just another bread and circuses. It's a one party divided by two branches of the same thing because they're accountable to the same people, regardless of who's elected. I withdrew from being a voter, from federal jurisdiction probably 15 years ago. So I don't vote because it just doesn't make any sense. I hear people keep saying, well, we'll vote new people and we'll get better control. I've been hearing that since I was 5 years old, and people would hand out cards, voting cards, change. We're going to make change. Things are going to be better. It never gets better. It only gets worse.
It seems to get a lot worse, and it seems to have gotten exponentially worse since, I would say, Clinton. Maybe Reagan. Maybe go all the way back to Reagan that things really started ramping up. But ever since Clinton, things have gone sideways to downhill, and then since Bush Jr., since 9/11, really, that's when everything just the crimes came out of the shadows and into broad daylight. They just no longer. It just seems like they just don't even care anymore to try to hide anything. It's just we're criminals, we're blatant criminals, and we don't care. And you little people can't do anything about it. So go ahead and cry, go ahead and protest, go ahead and write your blogs. Doesn't matter. We're still in charge. Or am I missing something?
Well, I don't see the little people doing much. You get a relatively a handful of bloggers, etc. But the little people, as it were, they're just so concerned with their debt and just trying to survive from day to day. I don't think I'm just amazed at the number of people who still believe in the federal government and the system and support it. Speaking of, let me just backtrack. Speaking of 9/11, I think I put up on my blog. I don't remember. I never realized until about a month or two ago that Building 6 was also destroyed. Building 6 had nothing to do with the two main towers that were taken down, and the famous or infamous Building 7 being destroyed, just collapsing underneath all that weight.
Right. Oh yeah.
Building 6, never heard of it before until a couple of months ago. The same thing happened. So if there's anyone who questions that 9/11 was anything short of an inside job, sponsored by the U.S. using the Saudis and the so-called terrorists as proxies for carrying out the assault on the United States. I mean, they basically were trying. So they lost 3,000 lives. It's a very, very small loss for what they gained in terms of the loss of freedom for the people in this country.
Yes.
For imposing further clamping down on freedoms. It's sickening, really.
It really is, and I told my wife that last night. We were watching something. I just turned to my wife and I said, "I don't know what's happened to our country. I don't know who these people are anymore.
Yeah,
I don't even recognize what's going on with our system. We don't have a system. Which is what you were just saying.
Well, you have a you do have a system. It's almost like a slave-like system. It's a statutory, it's a federal statutory a system that clamps down and keeps people. It's 1984. It's Orwell's 1984. He wrote about it, and it's people are seeing evidence of it every single day, probably in disbelief, and they can't make the connection. The hand-eye coordination between the deep state and the destruction of this country. There's that Bush, apocryphally, if not literally, said, the Constitution is nothing but a damn piece of paper.
Yes.
And that's true. It is true. The Constitution does not exist. The Constitution, as people commonly know it, founded by the forefathers, does not exist within the federal government. The federal government has their own constitution, which is similar to, but very different from, the original Constitution. There are no rights, there are only privileges. Privileges are granted by Congress, and the privileges apply to everybody because of the 14th Amendment. Mostly everybody in this country is a 14th Amendment citizen, which is a corporate citizen. And the only reason why people have been turned into corporations, all capitalized letters in your driver's license, your voter registration, etc., is because the corporate federal government can only deal with other corporations. It cannot deal with individuals. It cannot deal with truth. It has to only deal with fiction.
Yeah, and your birth certificate, that's the most important one.
Yeah. Birth certificate is used for collateral. It's a rabbit hole. It's a rabbit hole.
It really is.
People have no idea. And anyway,
no, that's why we do what we do, Michael. It's because people don't know, and the whole goal is to spark something that's in the back of their mind, to hopefully people will open up a book. They will go to another website. They will read some of your writings.
Even that's getting harder and harder to do, Rory. They're destroying the on the internet. You can't find things on the internet anymore that I'd be able to find 10, 15 years ago in doing research.
Oh no, that's
they're cleansing it.
They are absolutely cleansing it, and believe me, I live with it every day.
Yeah.
The Daily Coin is under siege and has been since about July, September timeframe, July, August, September of 2016.
Yeah.
And ever since then, it's been completely under siege. And my Twitter account, I just sent out a tweet a couple hours ago that said, my followers hasn't changed. It's been range bound between 2050 and 2065 for months and months and months. Hasn't changed. Hasn't gone anywhere. Doesn't change. They threw me off of Facebook about 6 or 8 months ago, so I deleted my account. My account, even though I went through the multi-step process to delete my Facebook account, it's still not deleted.
Sure.
It's still out there, still sucking up my information, still taking up everything that it can. So whatever benefits them, that's good. And whatever doesn't benefit all this criminal enterprise, it gets gets squashed like a June bug.
Biggest criminal enterprise ever, makes the mafia look like children's play.
Yes, it really does. I want to move on. Okay.
Yes, yes.
That's a very good opening, though. I want to kind of look at the economy, and the economy seems to be putting on a great show right now and lulling the masses further into a deep, deep, deep sleep. While on the other hand, there seems to be a great awakening, and we were kind of getting into this, Michael, in our discussion so far. But there seems to be a great awakening to some of the shenanigans of the deep state. I mean, as the underbelly of the economy continues to rot, how do you see the new axis of evil that where the whole conversation started with Russia, China, Iran? Are they part of what's unfolding, or are they going to be able to actually roll out or introduce a multipolar world?
Well, I think that's their objective. They're just simply letting the United States rot and from within and fall under its own accord. They don't have to do anything. I don't think they're not behind anything. This RussiaGate is all just a sham.
Yes.
I didn't realize how much sway the Clintons still have to do the stuff that they're doing and promoting a lot of stuff behind the scenes, including this woman who's accusing Kavanaugh. She has direct ties to Clinton. So anyway, Clinton's behind a lot of dirty stuff that goes on in this country. As to the economy, I don't know where the boom is. The stock market's been going up. That's only because the Federal Reserve has been, the central bank has been. The central bank as a word did not exist in this country, in the lexicon of verbiage in this country 15, 20 years ago. And I remember the first time George Herbert Walker, George Sr., used the words New World Order. I was shocked to hear that. And then I was shocked to hear how central bank is starting to creep into the vocabulary of everybody. And now that's all you hear about are central banks. They've been supporting the market. The bankers have been in control. Wall Street's been in control. If you look at something like the S&P, which is widely followed, I don't know how many stocks in the S&P are above their median averages. You've got 4 or 5, maybe half a dozen to a dozen stocks that are supporting the market.
Right.
The rest are underwater.
Right.
I remember that happened with the .com situation back in the early 2000s. And I said to a guy, listen, over 60% of the .com stocks are underwater. You have to be getting out of this market. Oh, no. Everybody's making a killing. A couple of months later, the guy got financially undressed because the market collapsed. But the warning signs are there. Unfortunately, the warning signs are there's only one reason. If one could distill a single word as to why people should own gold and silver, it would be debt. There's massive amounts of debt being created every day, every year. It just keeps growing. Yet nothing's happening. So the game is being, I don't know. Look how long Japan has been playing this game for over 20 years. I think China and Russia are building their own economic strength, expecting to take over when the United States finally does collapse. Everybody will go along with them, including the European Union. I mean, the European Union is the farce anyway. So I don't think they're doing anything to this country. The economy is extremely shaky. I don't see anything that's positive to it. It'll eventually collapse. It's just being supported by. It's like the Wizard of Oz and the behind the voice behind the curtain.
Yep.
Once you look behind the curtain, there's nothing there.
Nothing but smoke and mirrors, and in that, as far as Russia and China, I mean, this is something that I've been following very closely for quite some time, and they have both built out all of these parallel systems. They both have their own SWIFT alternative,
right?
And they are interconnected. Their banking infrastructure is everything is parallel to the Western economy, and they have the Belt and Road Initiative, which is this program that's 11 times the size of the Marshall Plan to build out the infrastructure of Mackinder's heartland. So they have a long-term objective, both Russia and China. But the question is, can they pull it off? I mean, is it going to work, or are they just part of what's going on right now?
Well, China has been part of what's been going on since the 60s and 70s. They've been, the Rockefellers were over there planting.
Yes.
Mao was also part of the group behind the scenes of the New World Order, etc. So I just see it as they're switching horses midstream from the United States to from the west to the east, and the east is going to take over. How it's going to unfold, I'm not quite sure. China's got a huge economy, but they're not very strong. They don't have the kind of financial infrastructure that would allow them to be an economic world leader. They simply don't. It doesn't exist. Russia is too small. I think those are the primary problems for them in terms of leading the globe, as it were. If you keep listening, Russia, China, they still say we want to do things within the framework of the IMF, within
Right.
right. So those are, listen to what they're saying, as well as watch what they're doing, but they're still supporting the system. They're
Right.
part of the system, but they're treating it in a different way, pretty much like Trump is working within the system, but he's fighting it at the same time.
Yeah, and that's what's confusing to me. And people have called me out on multiple occasions, saying, "Well, Rory, one day you say China is the answer, and the next day you say China is the enemy." Well, it's because that's what I'm looking at. Because one day it looks like China and Russia, that axis is going to actually be able to pull something off and make something positive for the world happen. And then the very next day, I'm reading that they're, buddying up, putting in, or, supporting more policies that are being written by the IMF and the BIS. So it's very confusing, and it's very difficult to look at and analyze and go, okay, this is a clear-cut path from point A to point B. There, from my perspective, there is no clear-cut path. I mean,
Well, there never is, Rory.
okay,
All the financial goings on by the BIS and the elites. Now, let's forget about the deep state. Let's go to the elites, those who are in control. You're talking about a relatively small handful of people that pull all the strings. And they're pulling the strings for China and Russia, but China and Russia are not the United States. They have a different sway. I don't see either one of them as the enemy. The biggest enemy that this country confronts is the federal government.
is the Federal Reserve.
Federal government. Federal Reserve is just part of the financial clampdown of this country. It's the federal government. Federal government is enabling the New World Order to do what it has been doing since the passage of the Federal Reserve Act in December 23rd, 1913. But that was just the culmination. They were still fighting. That was why Lincoln was assassinated. He wanted to bring in the goldback. I'm sorry, greenbacks, and backed by the United States, and not by the Rothschild banking system. Rothschild said, "Oh, here, wait a minute, bang bang."
We have an answer for that.
Yes, and there's your answer. And so that's been going on. The financial assault on this country has been going on actually since the Revolutionary War days. It just England has been fighting for financial supremacy from day one.
Well, now, let me ask you this, because what it looks like to me, Michael, is that there is an axis of evil, as Reagan, dubbed back in the 80s. But it's not what he was looking at. What I see is the three sovereign entities: Washington, D.C., that does not answer to the Constitution or the United States; the City of London, that does not answer to the UK or the European Union; and Vatican City that does not answer to Italy or any of the European Union. And you have three distinct entities: the Vatican, which is religion; the City of London, which is financial; and Washington, D.C., that's military. Now, if you have these three sovereign entities that answer to no one, how can we do anything to combat or to stand up to this machine?
Well, I would say we, in quotes, can't.
Okay.
You can't. You simply can't fight them. They've been entrenched for so long, in control for so long. Yeah, it's like those famous words from Rothschild: "Give me control of a nation's currency, and I care not who makes the rules." They control the financial. They've got a throttle on the financial anything, including Russia and China. Less so Russia, more so China. Russia has been fighting the central banks for quite some time. They kicked them out, but they're still looking to cooperate with them. So
yes.
I think you correctly summed up the three. Sovereign is not a word I would subscribe to them, but those are the three axes, and they're all interconnected. I'm not smart enough to know exactly how, but I know they're all interconnected, and it's all being controlled by money. It's always about money.
Always about the currency. Last thing I wanted to talk about, and then I'll let you get back to your afternoon. And there's been much ado made about the gold-silver ratio recently, and the COT, the Commitment of Traders report, the gold-silver ratio being so far out of balance, and the COT being bullish. And silver earlier today was having a pretty nice run. It was up about 2%, and I think it's kind of backed off from that at this point. Where do you see the silver market right now? And more importantly, Michael, I know that you've had a very skeptical eye on the bottom, and I actually sent you an email about a month or so ago when silver took this latest nosedive and got down sniffing around $13 handle.
Right.
And I sent you an email saying, have we hit the bottom that you've been looking for? And have we finally made that all-important new low that you have been so very skeptical about for the past almost 3 years? And remind us of that number that you're looking to breach.
I wouldn't say that I've been skeptical about it. To me, it has been the low. You need what's called ending action for any trend, or the upside or the downside. And the ending action that we saw on December 15, 2015 in the gold and the silver market, you saw a very small trading range bar, one of the smallest ones, and very light volume. That tells you that there's no further downside pressure. It just simply doesn't exist. That's a form of ending action. Now, the gold market has been stronger, relatively speaking, stronger than the silver market in approaching that December 2015 low. Silver, what was it, around 1360 something for silver?
Yes.
And we hit 1391 about a week or so ago. When you emailed me in August, I told you that my response was that the low, the probability of December 2015 being a low remains high, but there's still a possibility, especially now in silver, that we could see one more thrust to the downside, and maybe wash out a lot of existing stops if there are any there. It may not. The market has been in a sideways trading range for about a month and a half, and it's been holding slightly above the last downswing. On, I think it was September 4th, we saw a large range bar down, and maybe the close was on the 3rd. I can't remember if that was silver. I don't have my charts in front of me. And the market has been trading in a sideways pattern for the last approximately 20 trading days on the upper half of that bar. That's a positive sign. It's subtle, but it's positive within an overall weak structure. Silver remains weak. It remains in a downtrend. Gold still remains weak, remains in a downtrend. All these people that have been calling for big rally in gold, big rally in silver, don't know what they're talking about. And I responded to you that the market is still testing that 2015 bottom, and until we see a strong reversal of some kind to the upside, where we have a higher high and a higher low, to confirm that 2015 will be the bottom, you have to still say we need to wait until there's confirmation. There's not been any confirmation. The market has done nothing. It's been in a protracted sideways move, and it's reflective of the control that the three entities that you mentioned, London, Washington, and less so the Vatican. But until they're ready to let go, the market will just do what it's doing.
Kind of a shame.
Life is a shame under these conditions, but it is what it is, and we always have to deal with what is. So despite all the weakness that I see, as I look at the market, and I was looking at the charts again last night, there's just a glimmer of positive market activity for the past 2 months, but it's a glimmer within a very weak market. It's not enough to say, sell the house and put your money in precious metals. And I'm even concerned, what's going to happen. Is there going to be a huge turnaround in gold and silver? I'm not so sure anymore.
Really?
Why?
I think that there is. I think that it's coming. I think that we're going to start seeing some significant changes to the upside beginning mid to late next year. And that's
possible, Roy. But you're going to see that in any kind of market that's been suppressed, even whether it's a legitimate suppression or like the cotton market or something that's been suppressed for a long time, the sugar market. You will see natural turnarounds. But I'm saying, you remember, people were calling $400 gold, $10,000 silver. I'm sorry, reverse, $400 silver, $10,000 gold. Why? Why would it get that high? You would think the fundamentals would argue for it, but I don't follow crypto. I don't have a handle on cryptocurrencies, but I think that's the biggest threat to gold and silver right now.
Really?
Yes.
Wow, that's
because
interesting.
I think there's been so much talk about the fiat currencies, and they're going to go to zero, which is their natural internal value, zero. The only value is perceived between 2 years of the individuals who hold them. But the cryptocurrencies are they're being promoted now, even by the Wall Street. They're starting to take a harder look at them, and I think this is maybe even the IMF, I think, started talking about it. Christine Lagarde. I don't keep track of these things. I only glance at because I don't watch TV and I don't follow the news that closely.
No, Christine Lagarde said 2 years ago that by 2021 that she wanted to see a functioning cryptocurrency at the central bank level. Period.
Okay. So what they're going to do is prolong the agony of the fiat system and switch it over to a cryptocurrency. And what's that going to do for gold and silver? There's not going to be a huge need for it, just like they don't need it right now, because you got a sea of fiat paper. I said the only reason why you'd want to own gold and silver is, in one word, is debt. And the debt is not going to go away. It may be resuscitated through the cryptocurrencies in some way.
Okay. Then
these are not stupid people that
No.
run these organizations. So they know what they're doing far more than what we do. We're
yes,
clueless.
and they have all the plans. We don't.
Plans, control, and the ability to execute them.
Exactly.
So,
we don't have those plans, and we're not privileged to any of the private meetings that they have. So
I'm not sure what role gold and silver are going to play.
Well, let me ask you this, and I promise this is the last that I'm going to let you get back to your afternoon. What is the purpose of China? Well, China not so much at the state level. The citizens are still acquiring a lot of gold. India citizens are still acquiring a lot of gold, but Russia at the state level they're actually stepping up and acquiring more gold at the bank level in Russia, and it appears that they are also stepping up their mining production because 2 years ago they signed an agreement with China that they would do an interbank gold swap that Russia would afford or would send to China 80 to 100 tons annually of gold. So but Russia is now acquiring more gold and is acquiring what has been reported as almost their entire annual mine production. And that's what they're on par for this year. So that leaves that 80 to 100 tons of gold in question, and nothing has changed as far as their official reporting on their mining production. So there's not 80 to 100 tons of gold that's just coming out of thin air or miraculously appearing. So we know that there's gold coming from somewhere, but why are they acquiring all of this gold if they're not going to put it to use?
Well, insurance. I don't have the answer.
What does it insure against, though? I mean,
Well,
how does it work?
What's the ultimate money? Gold,
right?
Silver to a lesser degree. That does not mean now. In other words, they want to control the essence of what constitutes money. That doesn't mean that the fiat system can't be converted into the cryptocurrency system. And that may go on for another 10, 20, 30 years. But the gold and silver will eventually always prevail. I don't dispute that.
Okay.
But I'm just not sure what how the cryptocurrency market is going to replace the fiat currencies. Because they don't, listen, these people don't want to give up their cushy lives and what they're doing and control the world.
Right.
But I think that's why China and Russia are doing that, and they're acting independently. And that's why I said earlier they're going to let the West fall under their own weight. In the interim, they're storing up their nuts for the winter. It's like the grasshopper and who was it?
The ant, grasshopper and the ant.
Thank you. And that's what China and Russia are doing. They're smart players. Putin is probably the smartest politician on the globe right now. The way he's handling things, they know what they're doing. They know how the rules are changing. They're part of it, part and parcel of the whole thing, and they are protecting themselves with insurance by having control of the gold. If they don't have it, then they're out to lunch because they're not otherwise financially strong enough to run the globe. China doesn't have enough infrastructure and the means to have the yuan act as a world reserve currency.
Not yet, but they're working on it.
Not even close.
They're building it out.
But that's years in the making, Rory.
Yes, I don't dispute that, but they're working on it. There's no question about that. But Michael, I could continue this conversation the rest of the day, but I'm not going to take up any more of your time. I'm just going to ask that we do it again before too long.
Sure, anytime.
And we've been speaking with Michael Noonan, and you can find all of Michael's work over at Edge Trader Plus. Michael, what are you doing these days with your website, and what work are you doing?
I've pretty much just kind of been laying low because there's not a lot going on, and I'm trying to figure out what the future is going to be for gold and silver. I've not had a good year, primarily because I have refused to buy the S&P because supported by the federal people, and I refuse to go short gold and silver because I don't want to contribute to the downside of that. So I've been kind of hamstrung as to what I can do financially. And my biggest losses probably have come from gold and silver because I've been buying them when I thought we might see some strength coming to the market, only to get hammered again. So I've been laying low and just waiting for a turnaround. And I think we're getting closer, but I don't see it yet.
Yeah, I don't see it yet either. That's why I wanted to have this conversation.
Yeah.
But like I
So,
said,
and so I've made less and less reports because there's really nothing to say, and I have nothing to sell. I don't advertise anything, so I don't have to promote anything, and I don't have to promote a newsletter just for the sake of being visible. I just, when I've got something I think that's pertinent to say, and I don't mean to sound self-important about it, but the market is the market, and so far everybody that I read, and we're talking the top people around the world, have been wrong. The gold people who have a vested interest in seeing this market turn have all been consistently wrong. So,
which is a shame. But
well,
and that's why I respect you and your voice so much, because you only speak when you have something to say. You're not trying to sell anything. You're not trying to push anything on anybody, and I greatly appreciate that. You can see what Michael's got going on at edgetraderplus.com. And
right.
Michael, I certainly appreciate all your time this afternoon.
Rory, it's always a delight. You're one of the best out there for doing what you do, and I'm so happy that you're doing so much better.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. And we'll talk with you soon.
Okay, take care.